everyone. Welcome back to the Mind of Sai Marie. Today, we are diving into the labyrinth of the human mind with Marie Kuipers, the brilliant voice behind We Are All Mad Here. Marie, your book leans into a very specific kind of honesty. Was there a specific catalyst moment when you realized that hiding your madness was actually more exhausting than sharing it?
Yes, I mean, it wasn't one specific moment, but as I got a little bit older and I got away from my family and all the things that they expected me to be and, represent for them, it really became very clear to me that I actually did better with people and with situations when I didn't try to pretend that I was, perfect or fancy or the things that I was supposed to be pretending. So I gradually was just like, wow, this is actually better. People like me more when I don't try to be perfect. So it was kind of a gradual reckoning in that sense, but definitely once my parents passed away, I was completely finished with any sort of pretending. So yeah, that was sort of the detonation of the slow burn towards authenticity.
Well, the title itself feels like a direct confrontation, much like a mirror. Is We're All Mad Here a question you're asking the world, or is it the answer you had to give yourself before you could even start writing?
A lot of people ask me about the title, and so I think about it a lot. It's the name of one of the chapters in my. It's obviously from Alice in Wonderland, and I named one of the chapters in that because I went back a couple generations into my family with, and one thing I do talk about is generational trauma, where it just doesn't show up one day. It didn't start with my mother. It didn't start with her father. It started with his father, and probably his and his and his. But it drips. It drips down through all those relationships, the uncles and the aunts and the cousins and everything. And so there's one chapter sort of embodied that whole just chaotic madness of my family. And there was some joy in there too. But I also think the title captures what I want people to believe about their own madness. It's like an invitation to join the party, kind of. Like, come on in, we're all mad here. You can't possibly be any weirder than the rest of us. So I see it as kind of a joyful title, even though, there's some dark layers underneath.
Like that, especially with the Alice in Wonderland theme. I think that was the thing that probably stood out the most to me.
Yeah.
But in a world of independent journalism and activism, where I work a lot intersectionally with, I'm also a co-founder of Authors of the Resistance. So that kind of intersects with what I do here a little bit. We talk a lot about the truth. How does the emotional truth in a memoir like yours differ from the factual truth of a clinical report?
Well, it's real world examples. It's showing, a clinical report might talk about, say an anxious attachment or what any sort of, terminology like that. And a lot of readers don't know what that means or what it looks like in real life. So this is what that this is what that looks like. I think if you're reading it with both a little bit of knowledge of, a clinical perspective, but also your own real life stuff, that's a great combination. But what I just really wanted was to reach normal people who've had experiences that they don't really know how to unpack. Because I certainly didn't. I didn't know that my family was absolutely bonkers until, well into my 30s. So I'm kind of providing the anti-clinical look at, trauma, mental illness, generational trauma, anxiety. That's a big one. Grief. It's just it's how those things show up in your everyday life, which I think is valuable to everyday readers.
So, writing about these themes requires a high level of mental endurance. How do you protect your creative sanctuary when reaching back into those darker, more painful memories?
Well, by the time I wrote this book, I had probably been in therapy already like 25 years. It's been almost 30 years now. So I wrote it with the benefit of some like pretty deep healing work that I'd already done through therapy. So I think a lot of the pain of those experiences was long behind me because I'd already processed it. I made it my business to process it so that I could understand and so that I could avoid future mistakes. But I think it's a weird answer for you because people say, "Oh, it must have been so painful for you to write about that." And the truth was that the pain was already behind me. So it was actually kind of a delightful experience just pouring those memories out onto paper with the humor intact, which when you're first going through it isn't necessarily accessible, right? And so truly, I mean, there were definitely a few things that came up when I was writing it that I hadn't really thought about before, but I was able to look at it from sort of from the outside by that point. Um, and yeah, it was cathartic in a really good way. Just to get it, I'm sorry, my dogs are going bonkers. I hope you can't hear them. I'm so sorry. But anyway, yeah, I had hindsight on my side there, so I just felt like couldn't really hurt me anymore. And I knew that it was going to help somebody else on the other side, so that made it exciting.
That makes it worthwhile when you know that it's going to benefit someone and it's not just sort of a wasted experience in that way. So, resilience is a word that gets tossed around a lot. In the context of your journey, what does that word actually look like on a Tuesday afternoon when the coffee is cold and the writing is just hard?
I think resilience is always just taking a beat, letting yourself feel that exhaustion or that defeat that you might be feeling. Take a walk, grab a cup of coffee, shake it off, do a little dance, and then you just do the thing. You put one foot in front of the other. And I frequently find myself saying that if I'm kind of in a bad spot, or if I'm exhausted, or if I'm just like, oh, what am I doing here? I just say to myself, one foot in front of the other. And if you do that enough times, you're up and running again. And it doesn't take a lot of strength to do that. I think people believe that it does take a lot of strength to kind of get back to that forward momentum, but it doesn't if you just take one step at a time. Some days there's not going to be a third or fourth step. You're just going to go, nope, not today. And that's perfectly okay, because only you know when you have anything in the tank to give. But I think you can surprise yourself if you just take one foot in front of the other, one step at a time.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned this book was a journey of self discovery. Did you discover a version of yourself, perhaps a stronger one that you didn't know existed before the first draft?
Yeah, I did. Through feedback from, my writing community. I come from the publishing industry, a copy editor. And so I have a lot of great people sort of accessible to me. And the people who were reading the early drafts or the old blog posts that ended up as part of the book, they just kept saying to me, you're going to help so many people. People are going to see this and not previously realize that they can relate to it. People go through things all the time that they don't know how to explain, or they don't know why it happened to them. And that was a really interesting concept to me, because I have never thought of myself as really having anything valuable to say. Hello, that's foreshadowing from my childhood. But I realized that I did have something valuable to say. And so I wanted to be really, really careful and mindful of how I said it. And how I said it ended up just to be how I talk, how I would talk to you, having a conversation about, some of the messed up things from our families or whatever. Like, I did come to see myself as somebody who could help if I could say it the right way to get through. And so the tone of the book is just kind of like, I'm your buddy. And we're having a chat. And it's like I said, it's sort of an invitation to look into your own stuff and have a laugh. I think that was really, really important to me, that the humor remains intact, because for me, it was pure survival, is to be able to laugh at this stuff, and to use ridiculousness as a way to, pull in community. Everybody, you're all welcome to laugh at my stuff. Maybe you can laugh at your own stuff too. So
Right. That's key advice. If you can just learn to try to see it a little more lightly, it might not be as difficult to process. So, many people feel their stories are too messy for art. How do you find the symmetry or the beauty in life experience that felt like pure chaos when it was happening?
I guess to me, it's sort of fun to unpack those things. Like, oh my God, what sequence of events led me to be in that place at that time? What decisions had I made? What decisions had I been prohibited from making? How the hell did I end up there? And it's kind of like, it's sort of forensics. It's sort of like an emotional post-mortem of everything that led up to those moments. And again, some of those moments are hilarious. Some of them are heartbreaking, but they all happened, and they all led me down the path where I was when those events took place, or when those realizations happened. And it's just giving equal weight to the good and the bad, and the ugly and the hilarious.
So, when you were deep in the process, did you have a North Star reader or someone specific you were writing to save or to reach?
Sort of, yeah. Not one particular person, but when I was keeping a blog, some of these chapters appeared in my blog before years ago, a decade ago. And at that point, I didn't have very many readers. I was just had my friends or whatever. I was just writing to write things down. But some of those posts would get circulated and shared by people that thought somebody else might relate to it. And I started getting not letters, handwritten letters, I'm not that old, but emails or response submissions on the blog, whatever, just saying, you don't know me, but you have just helped me so much. I thank you for saying this stuff out loud because I never could. I never would. I'd be terrified. My husband would kill me. All these different things that would have prohibited them from looking at their own truth and thanking me for being unhinged enough, I guess, to just say it. And those letters from women I didn't know meant everything to me because, like I said, I didn't ever think that I was somebody or whose experience could resonate with anybody else, but it did. And it made it feel important that to the extent that I could represent those voices that weren't saying it out loud became really important for me to do that. So it's for those women, and it's primarily women, but men too. Yeah, it's for those women who really needed somebody to see them and to speak for them.
So, vulnerability is often framed as a risk. How has being this open in your writing actually served as a form of activism for your own life and community?
Oh, because I refuse to be ashamed. Shame is such a toxic element, and it's so poisonous and it's so prevalent, especially for women. And I just wasn't going to be ashamed. I didn't have anything to be ashamed of. Every, mistake in my life or whatever, I came by those mistakes. Honestly, I didn't know any better. Nobody does. I didn't choose my family. I didn't choose the indoctrination that I grew up with. And I made it my business to find my way out of there. So there's no way I was going to be ashamed of everything it took for me to get to a point of being semi. And in so doing, I hope that other people got the message that they don't need to be ashamed either. This is doable. You can get yourself out. You can pick yourself up. There is help available. There are friends available. I'm available. And so yeah, I think that does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that was very profound, and I completely agree. I just want to take a moment to commend you on your courage because those are steps that, really take a lot of bravery to do the inner reflection and decide to separate from everything you've known to be able to start a healing path. So I think that you did excellently with describing that to us. How do you balance the responsibility of telling your own story with the reality that other people, family, friends, or even enemies are characters in it?
This was not as tough as you might think because because I'm a chicken and I didn't write the book until after both of my parents were long gone. People sort of you know anti antichrist figures in the book. I don't care if they see it. I want them to see it. I want them to know, but I don't name them. I don't name anybody, and I change little details if people ask me to. At first, when I was writing the book, one of my brothers asked me to use a different name for him. He was like, I don't want any part of this. But after he read the book, he said, no, put my name back in there. I'm not embarrassed about this. I'm with you. So yeah, if my parents had still been alive, that would have brought the shame down on them. And that was going to be the biggest crime against humanity that I could possibly commit. And I think that's probably what my brother was feeling like, oh God, is this going to embarrass me? Of course it's going to embarrass you. Who cares? So yeah, I paid attention to it in that I didn't want to out anybody that I cared about or even that I didn't particularly care about. I didn't even really out the people that I loathe, but they know who they are. It's pretty obvious. So yeah, I'm respectful to all parties. They all have plausible deniability, except my brothers. They declined it. But yeah, but you know what? That's part of like doing crappy things to people in life. You're gonna be accountable at some point. Sorry.
That is true. And that's why if You just don't do those things and you won't have to worry about it later.
Exactly.
Your mission is transforming pain. Does the art replace the pain for you, or does it just give the chaos a more beautiful shape to live in?
Oh, that's a really good question. Think it's the latter. Um, yeah, I think you can use words and imagery to make something beautiful, um, out of some really ugly elements. And it also, like I said, a lot of stuff, some stuff came up when I was writing. So there was transformation in that as well. But the majority of things were already long past me. And yeah, rather than just having them, living rent free in my brain, even though they were sort of deactivated, to weave them into a story that will touch other people, is a really beautiful kind of thing, and that is a form of art. I don't usually think about my writing, especially my writing, as art, because it's not pretty. I write the way I talk. I curse a lot. Um, it's chaotic, but it did kind of come together into something pretty awesome, I think. So that was a good question.
Well, I think that if art is conveying an idea through another medium, then sometimes it is chaotic and messy, but that doesn't make it less artistic.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So, for the aspiring writer listening right now who is sitting on a story that maybe they're too afraid to write, or they don't have quite the courage you do to break through and tell those stories that might shake the family tree, what would you tell them as their first step towards breaking through that fear and seizing their bravery to just do it?
Write it as if no one's ever going to read it. Write it as if you're just going to burn it afterwards. And you can if you want, but you probably won't want to. But I think that's the only way. You cannot write with any sort of filters on yourself. You can apply those filters later in editing and development and all those kinds of things. But I actually worked with a book coach. She was somebody that we had worked together on other people's books before. She said, write a chapter about your extended family. I kind of want to know more about that. And there's some ugly stuff there. And that was ugly stuff I wanted to sugarcoat because I'm still very close with my cousins. And there was a massive rift between our family, just split apart due to some chicanery by my uncle. However, I'm the youngest kid, and like I said, I've always stayed close with my cousins. So when I wrote this chapter that she wanted me to write, I wrote it delicately and I wrote it not entirely truthfully, because if I had, it would have been like, this man is the devil. This man is the reason I hate Donald Trump so much because he triggers me. He's exactly the same way. That was going to be the truth, but I didn't write that because I didn't want to hurt my cousins. So I wrote what I thought was, decently good, funny chapter. And Amy, who was my book coach, she came back and she said, this is the worst thing you've ever written. She's like, I don't know what happened. Like, did you use AI for this? I was like,
Uh,
oh my gosh, that's funny, because it wasn't authentic and she could smell it from a mile away. So that's my advice. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just write it brutally truthfully, in all honesty, and you can burn it. You never have to hit send. You never have to submit it anywhere. Or you can get it all down, then clean it up as you wish. But you have to get the whole truth down, because otherwise there's no sense to it. There's no rhyme or reason, and people will know that it's not real.
yeah. So, final question, Marie. If a reader closes We're All Mad Here and remembers only one single feeling, what do you hope that feeling is?
Gosh, I hope it's like a fist in the air, like, yes, yes, hell yes.
Victory.
um, yeah, because I think there's some obviously some dark stuff in there, but there's some, I think, really empowering things, and I think that because I lived it. For example, I took up roller derby at age 44. Didn't even know how to roller skate, but I had been through something terrible with my ex-husband. He had stalked me and catfished me, and it was a really bad, bad, bad moment in my life. I had PTSD, and I was like literally laying around one day, and I was just like, what's the most ridiculous embodiment of like female badassery that I could possibly conjure up? That's what I need to do. And I was like, oh, it's roller derby, obviously. So I did that, and I learned to roller skate at 44. I tried out for a team. I made the team. I stayed in roller derby for now, God, 12 years, something like that. As a player, as a ref, as a coach, I coach little girls so that they never have to feel like they don't have anybody telling them that they can be weird and strong and awesome. And so yeah, like you find empowerment in weird places. And I don't expect everybody that reads the book to suddenly take up roller derby, but they can be inspired to do something wild that will help them to feel empowered. And so that's what I say when I say like fist in the air, like, yes, like I can do this too. I can pick myself up, I can regain my life and absolutely be in charge. And so that's what I want people to feel at the end.
I absolutely love that. Marie, thank you so much for joining me at the table today. I really have appreciated your time and your insight. To my listeners, you can find We're All Mad here at the links below in the description. And please keep finding the beauty in the mess. As always, remember the mind is the most important story that we'll ever tell. Until next time, this has been the Mind of Sai Marie.